None of the stories in the Old Testament are actual historical facts.
All right, let's see it.
There was no ancient Israel.
There absolutely, indisputably was an ancient Israel. The earliest reference of any kind that we have to a polity or a social group called Israel comes from the Merneptah stele, which dates to about 1208 BCE and comes from Egypt. And then starting around the middle of the 9th century BCE, so around 850, 840 BCE, we begin to see inscriptions from other nations making reference not only to the nation of Israel, but to their kings, and they accurately follow the order that they are listed in the Hebrew Bible as well.
Moses is the basis for the law. He's the lawgiver. And we're told that he was given the law from God. He comes down from the mountain. The 10 Commandments were copied from something in Egypt called the 12 Negative Confessions.
So this is a reference to the 42 negative confessions, and that image on the screen has taken the 42 negative confessions and reverted them into positive ideals, and they are never listed in any ancient Egyptian text as positive ideals. But these are mostly pretty generic ideals that are very repetitive, and a lot of them have to do with not stealing food from gods and things like that. But the only points of overlap between the 42 negative confessions and the 10 Commandments are very generic ideals, like murder is bad, adultery is bad, stealing is bad. There are absolutely no data that indicate there is any kind of genetic link between the 42 negative confessions and the 10 Commandments.
Even in the government, even in the U.S. government, there are statues of Moses in the halls of justice. Most people have never noticed that almost all the carvings, Moses has horns, because the horns are representing the moon.
Moses has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the moon. The reason Moses is sometimes depicted as having horns, or as we saw in the first image, having rays of light that look like horns, is because of Exodus 34:29, which explains that the people were fearful of Moses when he came back down from the mountain because he did not realize, the Hebrew says, karan or panav, which means the skin of his face either shone or had horns, or shone like horns. This word can refer to horns. It can also refer to shining light. And so both pieces of symbolism actually have significance. Moses had been in the presence of God. It seems that Moses was still radiating some of that deity, and horns were symbols of deity, and particularly of the storm deity and the high deity in the Northwest Semitic pantheon. And so Moses having horns would have been a reflection of Moses radiating a sense of divinity. At the same time, deities were also brilliant and shiny, and dangerously so, and so it also makes sense that Moses' face would have been shining. A good friend of mine, Seth Sanders, published a wonderful paper a little over 20 years ago in Vetus Testamentum entitled Old Light on Moses' Shining Face, which talks about how both pieces of imagery kind of reflect the same idea, basically that Moses has some divinity radiating out from him.
Moses was the focal figure of an ancient cult of moon worship. Here is the moon god. A lot of the old coins and carvings in the ancient world show the hands rise as they were worshiping the moon god. In Egypt and, of course, in Islam, here it is in the Vatican. You'll see the crescent moon. Even in the Catholic Church, they have the crescent moon. Moses represented a moon cult.
The data don't really support the historicity of a figure named Moses, much less any connection with any ancient moon cult. And the use of the moon in association with the cross starts in the 15th century CE and is a symbolic reference to Mary, the mother of Jesus, and specifically the reference in Revelation 12 to this mother who has the moon under her feet.
I'm not allowed to say certain things, but this is how they hide everything. So if you want to understand what you are, where we are, this ebook will literally unveil that to you.